Well, now that I have all the details in, it's time to do the shading and blending part, my favorite part. And you can see I'm going to go ahead and start with a charcoal pencil here. I could have just as easily have started with a 9XXB or a carbon pencil or anything that just produces the darkest darks possible, because I'm starting with the eye. Now, right here you can see I'm starting with the left eye. That would be left, his left eye right to us, looking at him. And normally I don't start with the right eye or the left eye. Anyway, I don't start with the eye that is to the right side of the photograph. But I'm doing this because it's this way I can have the reference here laying on top so that you can see it within the camera's view. So again, I'm doing something more for your benefit than my convenience, which, you know, is okay, I guess. It's just the whole thing's a little awkward for me, to tell you the truth. I'm also doing this on my flat desktop table, which I don't normally do on a flat table. I usually put it on my easel up at an angle. And after this part 2, I will be taping this up onto my easel so that I can finish it the way that I normally will, because I want to be able to see it straight on. Right now, what you are looking at is the camera's view. This is not actually my view. I'm sitting behind the desk is flat, and so I'm actually looking at this from an angle, because if I was to look at it like the camera is looking at it right now, you would be looking at the back of my head, because I would have to stick my head in front of the camera to actually see this. So this does interfere with my ability to get everything exact, but I'm going to do the best I can as a matter of lesson, and then for the rest of it I'm going to put it on the easel so at least I could be looking straight at it, and the camera will be at a little bit of an angle from here on out. But for this video, you'll get the benefit of looking straight at it. Now, you can see that I've added some charcoal to the dark area of the eye. I'm just going to go ahead and start to blend it in a little bit with the paper blender, which you can also use to draw with, as long as you have graphite or charcoal still on the tip. And I like to do this. It's not, a requirement. There are many ways to achieve the same thing, but you're going to just watch, and I'm going to narrate what I'm actually doing in this case. Oh, and by the way, to also explain why I normally start with the eye on the left side of the reference rather than the right, is because I'm right-handed. And so I like to start drawing from the left side and work my way over the right. This helps prevent smearing, because as you can see, like right there, my hand is on a piece of paper, and this is to help me keep my hands off of the drawing itself. It helps to prevent some smearing, but unfortunately, if you move that paper around, if there was drawing, some blending underneath that paper, and I slide it, well, paper is used as a blender too, and I can easily start smearing even with that paper. So you have to be careful, even when you're using a paper to protect your drawing, that you lift it up and move it rather than sliding it across your drawing. You never want to do that. Now, just as I was really focusing on the details when I was drawing this initial sketch, you can see the light sketch that's in the background there, I'm aiming to get all the details exact. I'm looking at every little dark spot, little blur line. I'm looking at degrees of shades within the eye. So you're going to see me, stopping and starting up again. Like for example, right here, I see these little black lines and dots within the eye. So I'm going to put that in, and then as I blend later on, a lot of that's going to disappear, and then you'll have to add it again and then blend it and it'll lighten up again. This is a process. The process of shading, blending, shading, blending, shading, blending over the same area is known as layering, when you're just putting on top, on top, on top, and that gives it depth. So if you only do one layer, you're going to end up with a pretty flat appearance. But if you layer on your shades, one on top of the other, it will have a much more three-dimensional feel to it, as if it's coming off the page a little bit. And so, especially with the eyes, which in my opinion, when drawing a portrait, I personally feel the eyes are the most important thing to get right in a portrait drawing. If you do not get the eyes exactly in the correct proportions, the correct shade and everything else, your whole portrait is going to suffer, and I don't believe you will be happy with it. I know I don't when I fail to achieve what I need. So a lot of time is going to be put into drawing this eye. And when you see other videos where they're sped up, you can get a good idea that it takes a while to draw just an eye if you're looking for realism. Whereas I'm here doing this in real time, we're already heading towards the 8-minute mark here for this video, and we have hardly even started with this eye. So I'm going to be stopping this video around the 15-minute mark for each of them. So we're going to go as far as we can, and then we'll just go on to the next part to continue and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to now jump to another part, so a little further down, because right now all I'm doing is just shading, and I want to kind of accelerate this a little bit without going into speed mode. Now, after I had already laid down my first layer and I blended it, you can see now that I'm taking this charcoal pencil here and I'm now adding more on top. So consider this my second layer, and also a little bit of refinement around the outside of the eye. Now, one thing that I have learned is that when you're drawing I believe you call this the iris, the round part here, the colored part within the white of the whole eyeball, is that you want a really nice sharp edge rather than a fuzzy one. When you're blending, it tends to fuzzy it up a little bit. So I'll often come in there and I'll clean it up and then refine it. And if you look at the reference photo, you can see that it has a very defined black rim around the iris. So you will see that during this instructional video that I will continually go back to that and refine it, because that's very important, to get it to look like the reference photo. And here I'm going to lighten some areas with an eraser pen, especially the highlight area here. Back to blending again. And I always will blend after I shade. I'll blend, just adding one layer after another. Now what I'm doing here is just adding a little bit of those small dark details that are showing in the reflection on the eye, and I'll come back and I'll lighten it, and then I'll come back and I'll go over it again. And I'm also, you'll find that the highlight tends to stand out better when you edge it with the darkest pencil that you have. If you take a very, very close look at the reference photo, you'll always notice that the surrounding area of a highlight, a reflection on the eyeball, is often very dark, but it's so thin that sometimes you can't notice it unless you really, really look close. But just knowing that it's there really helps out in all your portraits, because just simply make sure that you have some sort of really dark shading around the highlight so that highlight can pop. And so I will go in there back and return to it, come back again and get it, because you want that contrast. Without contrast, everything is flat. So it's just, and you're not going to get it all in one shot, at least not I don't. So I'll have to come back again and add more, take away, add more, and just develop the eye. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead after this right here, but again, I'm just putting in small little details, but you're going to see I'm going to blend it back in again anyway. Okay, using my kneaded eraser or blue tack. Now in this case I'm using blue tack. It just picks up a little more, it's stickier, but kneaded eraser is fine. I start highlighting areas, looking for the light areas within the iris itself. If you look at the reference, you'll see the little light area, and I'm working on that. And I'm just going to take some of the graphite and some of the charcoal off of the iris. But then I'm going to come back later again, like I mentioned, and I'm going to add again. Then I'm going to take off again. But it will start to develop the eye and give it more of a realistic look. So it's important to, get full use of your eraser, your blenders, as well as your shading instruments, your pencils. Now I'm back to working on the outer rim of the iris again. Again, I'm focusing on increasing the depth of the very dark rim there, as you can see. And I'm also paying attention to the fact that it's not an even width, but it actually is jagged. So if you look at the reference, you'll see that I'm actually including every little detail that I see on there, the little bumps, little jagged edges. I'll indicate it right here. Okay, so I sharpened my 9XXB to a fine point, because now I want to concentrate on a few of the little dark details within the iris, and I also want to refine the outer dark rim of the iris as well. And that's how I'm going to conclude part 2 of this series on that note.